What do you want, Mark? It's over.
His words sent chills down her spine. He was possessive, controlling.
Leave me alone. I'm calling the police.
He knew where she lived. He knew she was alone. Fear tightened its grip. Sarah threw her phone on the couch. This wasn't the Mark she knew, or was it? Had she been blind?
I'm coming over. If I can't have you, no one can.
A wave of nausea washed over her. This was more than just anger. This was obsession. This was dangerous. She ran to the window. Her breath caught in her throat. Mark's car, parked in her driveway. He slammed the car door shut. The sound was a gunshot in the stillness of the night. Metal glinted in his hand. A gun. He was inside. She was trapped. He moved with a terrifying calmness, his eyes blazing with a terrifying mix of rage and desperation.
911, what's your emergency?
The voice on the other end was calm, a stark contrast to the chaos engulfing Sarah. She could barely hear the operator over the sound of her own heartbeat, which pounded in her ears like a drum. The room felt like it was closing in on her, every shadow a potential threat.
My ex-boyfriend. He's broken in. He has a gun. Please hurry. Sarah's voice trembled as she spoke, each word a struggle against the rising tide of panic. She clutched the phone tightly, her knuckles white with fear.
Ma'am, I need you to stay calm and tell me your address. The operator's voice was steady, a lifeline in the storm of Sarah's terror. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself enough to respond.
Every second felt like an eternity. She could hear him downstairs, his heavy footsteps getting closer. The sound was like a countdown, each step bringing him nearer. She could almost feel his presence, a dark cloud looming over her.
He's here! He's found me! Sarah screamed into the phone, her voice cracking with terror. She could hear the door creak open, the sound sending a jolt of fear through her. She pressed herself against the wall, trying to make herself as small as possible.
The phone slipped from her trembling hands, clattering to the floor. She could hear the operator's voice, distant and muffled, but she couldn't make out the words. All she could focus on was the shadowy figure approaching, his silhouette growing larger with each passing second.
Ma'am, stay with me. Help is on the way. The operator's voice was urgent now, a stark contrast to the calm demeanor from before. She could hear the sound of typing, the operator frantically trying to get her the help she needed.
Outside, the sound of sirens pierced the night, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The police were on their way, but would they get there in time? Sarah's mind raced with the possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last.
Please hurry, she whispered, her voice barely audible. She could feel the tears streaming down her face, each one a testament to her fear. She closed her eyes, praying for a miracle.
The police burst through the door, their presence a welcome relief. They moved quickly, their training evident in every step. Sarah could hear their voices, strong and commanding as they searched for her.
Ma'am, you're safe now. The officer's voice was gentle, a stark contrast to the chaos that had just unfolded. Sarah looked up, her eyes meeting his, and for the first time that night, she felt a glimmer of hope. Ma'am, help is on the way. Please try to stay calm. Just stay on the line with me. We're doing everything we can to get someone to you as quickly as possible.
The dispatcher's voice was a thread of hope, but it felt so very far away. Sarah clung to those words, trying to find some semblance of comfort in the midst of her terror. She could hear the urgency in the dispatcher's voice, but the minutes felt like hours.
Come out, Sarah. You can't hide forever. Don't make this harder than it has to be. You know this is your fault. Mark's voice was laced with fury as he banged on the closet door. Each thud reverberated through the small space, making Sarah's heart race even faster. She knew he was getting angrier by the second.
He was going to find her. She could feel it. The closet door wouldn't hold forever, and she had nowhere else to go. Her mind raced with thoughts of escape, but there were no options. She was trapped. The police were taking too long. Every second felt like an eternity. She had called them what felt like ages ago, but there was still no sign of help. The dispatcher had promised they were on their way, but where were they? Help isn't coming fast enough, she thought, despair washing over her. She could hear Mark's threats growing louder, more desperate. She knew she had to stay quiet, but the fear was overwhelming. She was on her own. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. She had to find a way to survive until the police arrived. She couldn't rely on anyone else. It was up to her to stay hidden, to stay safe. The minutes dragged on, each one feeling like a lifetime. She prayed silently, hoping for a miracle, hoping that the police would arrive before it was too late. Sarah grabbed a baseball bat, her father's old one. It was heavy, worn from years of use, but it felt like a lifeline in her hands. She could almost hear her father's voice telling her to stay strong, to fight back. The memories of playing catch in the backyard flooded her mind, but now, this bat was not for play. It was for survival. She pulled it from the back of the closet, her heart pounding in her chest. Her knuckles turned white as she gripped the bat, the only thing standing between her and the terror that awaited outside. There was a small window in the closet, barely big enough for her to squeeze through. She glanced at it, hope flickering in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she could escape. But it was too late. She heard the door creak open, the sound of heavy footsteps echoing through the house. He was inside. Her back hit the wall, the cold surface a stark reminder of her limited options. Nowhere left to run. She could hear his breathing, slow and deliberate, as he searched for her. The closet door rattled and she held her breath, praying he wouldn't find her. But the door swung open and there he was, towering over her with a menacing grin. Fade to black. The sound of a struggle filled the air, a desperate fight for survival. A gunshot rang out, shattering the silence. A sickening thud followed, the sound of a body hitting the floor. Sarah's heart raced as she tried to process what had just happened. The bat slipped from her hands, clattering to the ground. She was free, but at what cost? The darkness enveloped her, and she knew that life would never be the same again.